which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Duff.
Here.
Dumont.
Here.
Jeremy.
Here.
Pedro.
Here.
Alec.
Here.
McNutt.
Here.
O'Brien.
Here. Additions to business. I had one thing I'd like to add. And when we had our special meeting last couple weeks ago, last month, I guess, technically, we motioned for the tiki candle price, but we didn't motion for the tiki candle purchase. So I'd like to add tiki candle purchase under item I-1, I guess. And aside from that, the only other thing, I guess, would be as far as the order of the agenda goes. Mr. Powell's tied up at another board meeting with White Lake right now. He will be coming tonight, but he's probably going to be a little late. So I guess at that point, I'm suggesting that we move his presentations to item 10 to past 12. So it'll be post 12 or pre-13, whichever way you want to say it.
So moved.
Second.
So motion by Duff, second by who was that?
Motion here.
Yeah.
Motion by Malik, second by Duff. My ear's kind of plugged up tonight, so. To approve the agenda as amended, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. With that, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Correspondence and information, we had a whole bunch of stuff. We received something from the Circuit Court, the Family Division for County of Oakland for a thank you for joining their elected officials for Youth Assistance Mission Program. And something from Point Blank Township regarding small municipalities, and we're not small enough to qualify for that, so. We also had a notice from Commerce Township as far as, from Eagle, actually, for a permit for Commerce Township for their wastewater treatment plant. And then we had something from Oakland County for pet adoption, we're talking about dog licenses and stuff.
Just a reminder to the residents that
Yep.
you need to have your licenses by June 1st.
June 1st.
Otherwise, there's a late fee, and it's a substantial late fee.
And lastly, we get a notice from Oakland Community Health Network that declaring May 22nd as a mental health month. So they gave us a resolution that would be nice to move forward with if we so choose. So,
Motion.
motion by Stuff, second by Dumont to follow their motion, their resolution stating that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries on that. So I think that was about it. With that, we have no public, so I think we can probably bypass the first call and move on to consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Duff, second by Malik to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Dumont.
Yes.
Jeremy.
Yes.
Pedro.
Yes.
Alec.
Yes.
McNutt.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Duff.
Yes.
Okay, we have no board appointments. We're moving Mr. Powell to after 12. We have no public hearing. So we'll move along to new business A, which is Parks and Rec Commission recommends council accept for resignation. Chairperson Julie Miller for the Parks and Rec Board.
Motion.
There's a motion by Duff,
Second.
second by Mr. Malik. Discussion, I know Julie would really like to serve, but she's been down with COVID and hit her pretty good, I guess. So,
Yeah, she would if she'd stay on if she could.
yeah, well, let's hope that she gets back into good health and hopefully, maybe she'll,
She's out
she
riding her
feels
bike
like it. I'm
now.
sure she'd like to get back on.
Yeah,
I know she hated to resign.
absolutely.
When she called me and told me that she was going to have to resign, I told her that, obviously, that do what she needed to do, but that as soon as she felt that she was physically able to kind of pick up where she left off, to let us know, and we'd do everything we could to get her right back on.
Yeah.
So, just glad to hear that she's doing better, though.
Yep.
So, it's a slow process.
Well, with that, motion was on the table, so all in favor on that?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Planning Commission recommends council adopt the updated village master plan as presented.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Duff, second by Dumont. Any discussion on that one? I'm sure everybody read it thoroughly? We did a lot of work on it, planning.
It's
didn't we?
comprehensive. I went through much of it.
Yeah, it was
It's a lot of work.
and there was a fair amount of changes that were incorporated in it too, so. We made a lot of changes in the village here in the last 5 years, that's for sure, plus demographics and everything, so. It was a lot of stuff to do, so. With that, all in favor on that?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Request from Police Chief Ellsworth to purchase and license 2 handheld Motorola radios in the amount of not to exceed $16,000. Chief?
This is for, what happened is, since we're with Oakland County Dispatch, they were able to use the 911 funds to purchase 8 of our patrol radios, our prep radios that we carry. We're going to a new system. I'm on the policy committee. We've been working on this for the last 2.5 years. These radios, they only allowed us, because it goes by full-time members, they only allowed us 7, or excuse me, 8, because we had Wachowski, which at that time he was still considered technically full-time. So they gave us 8 new radios. This just, the other 2 supplement that with for our Marine Patrol and our reserve officers. We could use 2 more, but they're so expensive. We're going to stick with the 2 extra ones because they are, like I said, $15,255 plus shipping and handling. And then we also are going to be on the hook for licensing fees through the state of Michigan at $250 a pop. So they're great radios if we can get them. The problem is that I want to get them ahead of time. We're switching over probably late fall. We initially were going to do it in June. However, supply and demand, nobody can get the things they need. So in order for us to do that, this is budgeted funds. We've actually budgeted for the last 3 years, and I was waiting for the right time to do that, and I think now is the right time. At least get them in hand. I didn't want to buy them 2 years ago and have them sit on the shelf. So now is the time to do that.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Duff, second by Dumont to, what's that, purchase 2 licensed radios not to exceed $16,000, is that correct? Yep. Okay, any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Duff,
Yes.
Dumont,
Yes.
Giramini,
Yes.
Malik,
Yes.
Nutt,
Yes.
Nedrow,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Okay, next one's from the police chief also, is to attend the IACP 2022 annual conference. Down
Yeah,
in
it's-
Texas, is it?
Yeah, it's in Dallas. The best part about this is, before people get up in arms, is that it's through a grant fund. I applied last year. We were supposed to go to New Orleans, actually, for 2 years in a row. But due to COVID, we had to put those off. We have reservations in Dallas this year, so looks like we're going to Dallas. What we do is we absorb the bills up front, and then the federal government actually reimburses us through a grant program, so up to $2,500. I did the preliminary application again because they requested it for the 3rd time in a row. And it's going to be under $2,500, and I think it's going to be right around $2,300 total with incidentals. So it's a great, I went to the one in Chicago, and I believe in 2019, and it was absolutely eye-opening. It's incredible. Well, plus you get to see a lot of cool stuff from Saudi Arabia.
You always come back with some.
Yeah, there's always something,
information.
and there's a lot of national recognized speakers. At the time I was there, the president actually came and spoke at the conference. So it's well worth it, and like I said, initially it's going to cost my time, so.
That's a week, is it?
It's actually October 14th, I would fly out and fly back on the 18th, so
Yeah.
5 days I'd be out of town.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Duff, second by Dumont. For Chief Ellsworth to attend the IACP 2022 Annual Conference. Any discussion on that? Roll call vote on that, please.
Dumont,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Malik,
Yes.
Knut,
Yes.
Pedro,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Duff,
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Item E, 12E, employment agreement with our new treasurer, I almost couldn't even say it, Jennifer Hansen. So, Dave, you want to take this?
Sure. After our special meeting a couple weeks ago, after council had completed the interview of Ms. Hanson, I was directed to begin contract negotiations with her. She and I were able to come to an agreement really fairly quickly as to the terms. Generally speaking, this contract is really very similar to the contract that we had reached with the last couple treasurer candidates that we had that did not work out for various reasons. Jennifer has already notified White Lake Township that, assuming council approves the contract tonight, that she has given her notice. Tomorrow would actually be her last full day of employment with White Lake, and she will be starting with us next Monday. You'll recall that at the interview meeting, Mike Kondak had brought up the Michigan Treasurers Association training that's in Mount Pleasant later in the month. Council had authorized us to go ahead and get her registered, pre-registered. There was a time deadline involved. We were able to get her registered. We actually got her the last room that was available at the hotel.
Wow.
So she'll be able to stay right on site. So, again, bottom line is she'll start work next Monday. She'll be with us for a week. Then we'll send her up to Mount Pleasant for a week, and she'll be oozing with knowledge when she gets back. I'm sure.
Motion to accept the employment agreement for Jennifer Hansen to become our new treasurer.
Second.
Motion by Duff, second by Mr. Malik. Any discussion? I think it's great. With that, roll call vote, please.
Malik,
Yes.
Knut,
Yes.
Pedro,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Duff,
Yes.
Dumont,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Super.
When Jennifer came in last week to drop off the signed copy of the contract, she just said, assuming that the contract was approved tonight, she just wanted to thank council again for your confidence in her, and she's very excited about coming to work at the township, at the village again.
Again, yeah. I think that's great. Okay. Next item is Michigan National Resources Trust Fund. We had to get professional services to be able to implement that grant money, right?
That's correct, yeah. Yes, this is the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund grant that we've preliminarily been approved for by the DNR. I've shared the program guidelines with Councilman Germini, his relationship or liaison position with the Parks and Recreation Board, but really there are a number of requirements in place to go through with the grant processes. And the quick and dirty on it is basically that the DNR doesn't want to have to deal with administrators like me who don't know much about the recreation and grant process. So as a condition of the grant, we are required to obtain the services of what they consider to be a prime professional, which has to be either a licensed landscape architect, a licensed architect, or a licensed engineer to finalize the plans for the project, to be responsible for the oversight and of all the bid documents in the forms that are required by the DNR, to oversee the bidding process per se, and get the work done, and then in the long run, then eventually certify that all the work has been done consistent with the grant application. So through Commerce Township, I was put in touch with Jason McDonald of MAC Land Design, who is a licensed landscape architect. He works in partnership with a woman named Leah Groya, who has her own consulting firm. They both have worked with Commerce Township before, and I got rave reviews from the people at Commerce Township about them, not only in terms of their ability to help us kind of put the meat on the bones in terms of the project itself and get everything done that has to be done, but also to be able to work with the DNR to get all the approvals that are necessary. Because as we move through the process, essentially every step of the process that we take going forward is subject to DNR approval. They have to approve the plans that the final plans that we prepare for the project. They have to approve the bid documents. They have to approve the contracts for the people that are going to do the work on the project. Ultimately, they'll have to approve the work as done. So I think it'll really behoove us to have somebody that has worked with the DNR in the past and apparently has worked with the DNR very, very well. So I'm recommending that council go ahead and approve the agreement with MAC Land Design for that firm and their associated consultants to work as the prime professional with us on the Clara Miller Park project.
Dave, just a question on that. So that they have a figure in here, not to exceed 14.8. Does that money come out of the grant money, or does that come out of our budget?
It is considered to be a reimbursable expense.
Okay.
So, I mean, understand it's still going to be probably sometime next month that we actually get the actual grant documents from the state, which council will have to approve. So that'll be on an upcoming council agenda. And then after that, then eventually the money will start to flow. So we may be fronting some of the money, but ultimately.
But eventually we'll be getting it back.
Yeah,
So
those are considered to be
it's gonna budget
reimbursed.
neutral for us, basically.
Yeah. And keep in mind, too, that it's a $100,000 grant, and then it's a $100,000 match.
Right.
So,
Which we've budgeted for, though, so.
correct, yeah.
So essentially, it shouldn't be a separate budget item,
Yeah.
essentially, yeah.
But this money will come out of the money that's been budgeted or that we
Right.
will be receiving
Right.
for the grant.
Yep, okay.
Move to accept the proposal.
And accept the resolution, I guess.
Yes.
Motion by Dumont.
Second.
Second by Giormini. Any discussion on that? Roll call vote on that, please.
McNutt?
Yes.
Nedrow?
Yes.
O'Brien?
Yes.
Duff?
Yes.
Dumont?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Malik?
Yes. Okay, moving on, to next item was G, which is resolution approving Lakes Area Youth Assistance volunteer members. And we happen to be lucky enough to have two members on our council, so Bill and Mike McNutt. Both you guys have been on it.
Yep.
Appreciate,
Do nice things.
appreciate that, so,
They're a pretty well-oiled machine.
yeah.
They know
yeah,
exactly what they're doing, they're very good at it.
yeah. Good association with them, so.
Do we need a motion on that?
Yes, we do need a
Motion.
motion, yeah.
Yeah, basically, we're accepting their
Yeah, motion to approve.
resolution here. And who's the second on that? Motion by Duff, second by Malik. Any discussion? You guys are still going to serve, correct? Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And
And just
hopefully
one-
traffic's light for Mr. Powell.
Just one comment on the youth assistance board membership too. You're right, it's a very well-run organization. They do a lot of good things, but they couldn't do it well without the support of communities like the contribution, the annual contribution that we make to youth assistance and the service that they get from the volunteer board. So,
Okay, next, item H, resolution approving West Nile Virus Fund expense reimbursement request under Oakland County's West Nile Virus Protection, Virus Program, I guess.
Motion.
Second.
Motion Dust, second by Dumont. Any discussion on this one? This is something we do every year.
Correct. And actually, yeah, we just got formal approval of our plan from the county today, so this is very timely.
Great. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries on
Would that
that.
be roll call because it's money?
It's a reimbursement program, though, really. I guess. Right?
This is authorizing me to seek reimbursement from the county. That's correct.
Yeah, yeah. So we're not spending anything. We're getting it back. With that, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Aye. Fireworks.
Council, I put this on the agenda tonight. It's mid-April right now, and the discussions that I've had with Zambelli this year and with Sal Lenara, who's our new project manager this year, the fellow that we worked with the last couple of years, is no longer with the company. They've all been very good, very productive, but I am concerned. I'd like to get a contract signed with Zambelli so we can lock them in to the July 3rd date for Tiki Night fireworks this year. I know that there was discussion at the special meeting about potentially council going up to a 50% match, or to match whatever Onwards and Upwards is willing to contribute. I know Onwards and Upwards met again last night. I didn't hear if there was a specific figure that Onwards and Upwards came up with, but maybe Councilman Giramini can provide an update, or Mr. Kondak. But I guess once we know or have a better idea maybe what Onwards and Upwards is willing to contribute, then we can discuss the potential match by the village. And then I'd like to get authorization for me to follow through with Zambelli, get a contract in place, again, just so we can lock in that date. The one piece of information I would add is that I had follow-up communications with the project manager last week, and I said, okay, listen, I'd like to get this date locked in. We're still trying to decide exactly how much we're going to have in terms of the budget for the display this year. If we do go ahead and lock in the immediate future, can we increase the amount of the budget prior to the show? And if we can, what kind of a time frame are we talking about? And what he indicated was, yes, we get a contract in place now, you can increase the budget, we can't decrease the budget, but we could increase the budget, and he said we could do that up until June 1st, and that would still give them enough time to locate the additional product and then make arrangements for the product to get shipped here to the village. So, again, my primary concern tonight is let's figure out basically a floor for the amount of the contract, let's get the date locked down, and we can make some final decisions about budget, excuse me, between now and June 1st.
The other thing you did mention too, I think, Dave, at least when we talked last, was there was another company that we were looking at also. And I think you said that it was probably prudent not to switch horses this year because of the way the supply chain is. And Zambelli's been a good company to work with over the past. The other company was substantially less, I think, right?
Yeah, the quote that I had gotten from the other company was for less money, but it was also a smaller display than what we've got. Even though, as we've talked about before, the quote we got for Zambelli for the same show this year that we had last year is a huge cost increase because of shipping costs.
Kind of like the price of gas.
Just like everything else. Exactly right. So, but yeah, it was a smaller display. But yeah, we do have a good relationship with Zambelli. I was going through some historical documents over the last week or so, and it looks like maybe even as far back as 2004, we've used Zambelli. So, I mean, we're talking almost 20 years. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with kicking the tires with checking pricing from time to time, but I just don't think this is the year for us to try to make a switch, if we did want to make a switch at all, so.
Okay, with that, I guess either Mark or Mike, do you guys have any, any more info to add to that?
We didn't come to a final number. We did, in a meeting previous to this one we had last night, we had talked about 25,000 as being the number we were going to target for now. But until JR and Dave are able to have a conversation with Zambelli about what that would entail, and then can we talk them down from the 35 point and things like that to see can we find a better number? And we said, because we have time till June 1st to increase the potential show, we wouldn't come up with a final number last night because we knew we had time to.
Yeah, makes sense. Your thoughts are to go, still go with Zambelli though, and
Oh, yeah.
try to
Yeah,
get the best bang for the buck?
I did the drill down on both companies and looking at the potential offerings and everything.
You've been sitting on that all night.
I was sitting on it all night.
So, yeah, we said, and like JR said, the crew they use knows us, knows the system, knows the barge. So there's all those potential hiccups
Yeah.
are avoided as well.
Okay, well, I think that, anybody else have anything to add, or? I think probably at this point, I don't see any reason why we can't authorize administrator to get a contract in place with Zambelli and then move forward
With
with
what number on it?
Yeah,
They're gonna want a number.
I guess what I'm hearing is
25.
It's 25,
Not to exceed.
12.5 from onwards and upwards, and then 12.5 from the village, and then in the meantime, JR and I can have a conversation with
Have some
the project
conversation.
manager and see if we can get more for that, or if we want to come back and ask for more money.
Mhm.
I'll make a motion to that extent, so authorizing the administrator to seek a contract with Zambelli for for 25,000 for the total show, 12.5 contribution from the village. And for the date of
July 3rd.
3rd, sorry.
Second that.
Motion by Duff, second by Melick. Discussion.
Yeah. It's something the whole village enjoys, the people, the whole ball of wax, but we got to stop and think about where's it going to end. Okay? You know, things are going up everywhere around us, but what happens if next year's 45,000?
Yep.
You know, I mean, it's something the community has to look at, because fireworks are beautiful, but poof, and they're gone.
Mhm.
And, you know, Michael, he juggles the numbers, or has in the past. But it's a serious commitment, and a big one, dollar-wise. I just, I worry about the future of it. Just something to bring up personally, because it's, we're all paying for it.
Mhm.
You know, when you got a proposal here for roads and everything else, and that's a big chunk.
Yes, it is.
That's all I have to say.
I guess, Bob, just to follow up on that, I guess my comment, and I've said basically this to Mike Kondak in some of the conversations that he and I have had, even if next year we have the exact same show that we have this year, not a dollar more, not a
Right.
single firecracker or shell more than we have this year, at least we're having a show. I mean, a couple of years ago, we didn't have any fireworks at all, so I think we need to try to keep that in mind, too, so.
Well, again, I'm not against it at all.
Right.
I have a big concern about, you know, everything keeps going up, and we're seeing that in everything. And I just worry about that number for next year.
Yeah, well, the other thing, the whole reason basically that was started though was to safely have a lake event that we could have
Right.
with the village included, and that the police department didn't have to go absolutely haywire and try to put stuff out all over the place. So it was basically brought into a community event for safety's sake. I know that's what John Coxer started it for.
Yep.
Because things were getting out of hand and getting
Sure.
out of control. So, you know, you start looking, I guess, from the village side standpoint, for $12,500, if the village puts in for that amount of money, that's not much when it comes to somebody getting hurt. So, that's kind of what my thought is on it, too. So, I mean, residents can have a say. They can suggest that we put a halt to it or tone it back as much as they want to, but just try to keep that in mind, too. So, it is a good event and fun, and it gives everybody something
The turnout is
safe.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, not only from the village point of view, but from
Right.
people around the general area.
Dave, how much negative correspondence do you receive in reference to the 3rd of July fireworks?
Really none. So there may be some complaints occasionally about how the police department handles parking.
Yeah.
But other than that.
Or probably, I imagine probably there's the after-hours ones, right? I mean, after the,
Well,
you're always
yeah.
going to get those.
And usually the next day we get a fender bender reported, But
Yeah.
for the most part, goes up, considering we triple our generally we triple our population for that night.
That night, yeah.
Let me put it this way, I think I would probably get a lot more negative feedback if we canceled the fireworks and didn't have them.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
no
do
doubt
that.
about it.
So,
Yeah. And a thought, like the onward and upward thing, possibly at the picnic this year, maybe we can have a 50-50 or something. I don't know if we can do something like that or not.
Parks and Rec just had the Cornrows meeting last week. and
Right.
They asked me specifically, can Onwards and Upwards do the 50/50? So
Sure.
that's-
I mean, if you end up with $400 or $500 or $100, that's a plus. So, anything to create some funds.
As all our costs go up, fundraisers are that much more difficult to raise money at, so it's always going to be a challenge that way, too, so. But with that, I think we have a motion and a second, so
And we need a roll call.
we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Pedro,
Yes?
O'Brien,
Yes.
Duff,
Yes.
Dumont,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Mallett,
Yes.
McNutt,
Yes.
And if we have to amend the budget, I guess, a little bit, I'm sure Mr. Condick will be around, so he'll perform some magic if need be.
Yeah, he's magic with those numbers. Magic Mike.
Okay, well, great. That one's off our plate for a little while here. So I-1, tiki candle purchase.
Yeah, I make a motion that we purchase tiki candles for tiki night.
360 tiki candles at $5.19, I think I heard.
I'll second that.
So motion by Malik, second by Duff. Any discussion on that? Only thing I want to say is sometimes we get a little carried away, but we've got to make sure we motion correctly. So I know in that work session, we discussed a lot of stuff about tiki candles, right? I mean, but what it boiled down to it, what Pam was asking was the requirement to purchase it, and that's, we motioned last month to set the price for $5, but we never motioned to purchase them, so.
Right.
Just we'll try to keep on track, and that's part of my fault, I think, probably, because I was going all the route of trying to figure out the dollars on how to purchase it, but just try to be cognizant when we make motions, and try to be complete when we make motions, so. Discussion on that? Other than that?
Just a confession, I went ahead, I did order the tiki candles today.
It's okay, but we
haven't
have-
paid for them yet.
Administration
I did
can
order.
buy up to, what is it, $2,500 without, right? So it's under that amount anyways, but any case, roll call vote, please.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Duff,
Yes.
Dumont,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Mallett,
Yes.
McNutt,
Yes.
Pedro,
Yes. All right.
Way to be a rebel, Dave.
Second call to the public. We're way early and we have no public. I guess we'll bypass the second call to the public. Item K, Administrator Gillum requests council move into closed session immediately after agenda item 17 to discuss, one, pending litigation, Village of Wolverine Lakes versus
Halfley?
Heffley, OCC case number 2021-191676-CC, and number 2, attorney-client privilege correspondence.
Motion to move into closed session.
Second that.
After item
After item
17. Any discussion on that? I don't believe we need a roll call, or do
Yes,
we
you-
need-
yes,
you
you
do
do.
need a roll call, yes. Roll call vote, please.
Pedro,
Yes.
Mallon,
Yes.
McNutt,
Yes.
Duff,
Yes.
Dumont,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
All right. Set topics for April 27th work session. What's that?
I didn't say O'Brien, I'm sorry.
Oops.
Yes.
Set topics for April 27th work session.
Motion to go?
Do we have anything that we need to, May's gonna be our budget, right?
Second?
Cancel April 27th?
He said cancel, I said yes.
Yep. Motion by Duff, second by Malik. To forego the work session this month. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have a question, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Since Mr. Powell isn't here, we going to forego that, or are we going to wait after our
I think we have
closed
to,
session?
we
or-
have to, have to discuss roads
Yeah.
one way or the other here.
Can we
Yeah.
move into closed session and then come back?
Yes, we probably could.
Yeah, let's do that.
I guess we can go through the rest of the agenda first and then go into closed session. So we'll move Mr. Conduct further down the road, I guess, huh?
Mr. Powell?
Or Mr. Powell, yeah.
The other one.
Yeah, the other Mike, sorry. So I don't believe we have any pending business?
None. Thank you.
Update from Police Chief Ellsworth.
I'll make this fairly quick. Thank you.
Draw it out, draw it out.
Yeah, I know, right? We're trying to
Timing
kill
season.
time here. Thank you for the radio purchase, obviously, but last month when I came to you for the boat, some kinks got thrown into our plans. And when we finally met with the manager of the sales place, the price was increased significantly. Some things were not priced correctly, and with the costs going up so much, it went up like $5,400. However, if you recall, I asked the council to approve $40,000. That also included graphics and the lights and the wiring that we would need for such. I did some more negotiations with them, and we got it down to, it was an additional $2,200. However, we remained everything the same engine. One of the options was to reduce that. That would have saved us a fairly significant amount. But I felt it was important to maintain what we had approved, with the exception, I did give the authorization to go ahead with the $2,200. We will make it up somewhere with the lights or the wiring or if graphics, or if it does run over, I'll come back to you and let you know if we do need that. But I felt it was important to get it going, get it on the books. I have forwarded the email with the wire routing information for the banking for the $10,000 deposit that they require to get the boat started to be built. So that being said, it wasn't quite as smooth as I had hoped. However, they said the boat's going to be done by August 1st. I told them no rush. I didn't plan on picking it up until September. However, we'll make arrangements to pick it up. We're going to have to actually make a quick trip to Georgia to pick that up, unless somebody's driving down there and wants to grab it on the way back. But that's, so that's off my shoulders now and back onto you guys. Number two, I have not received our body cameras or our cameras yet, or our Durango that we ordered. The Durango was supposed to be in. It has been built. The VIN number has been assigned. It's sitting down in a yard down in Detroit waiting for one part. And I think we all know what that part probably is, along with the 18 others that are sitting down there from local departments. So one good thing is because we ordered the V6, ours was built. Walled Lake ordered 3 V8 with the Hemis, and they completely canceled their orders. They're not going to get theirs this year. So they're going to have to look elsewhere. So I guess if there's a bright side, we are going to get it. We just don't know exactly when. And I think that's it, right? Is there anything else that was sprung up on me this week?
Not that I can recall.
Okay. Well, thank you guys very much again for the IACP. That's in October. I think that's going to be a very good conference, so thanks again.
Okay. Mr. Conduct, Treasurer?
Nothing here, Mr. President.
Nothing? Okay. Mr. Gillum?
I'm going to take advantage of the FaceTime on the camera to ask our residents for help with 3 different things right now. First of all, we sent out an email, I believe it's posted on the village website, but Commerce Township is looking for a village resident to start serving on the Township Parks and Recreation Board. It's a group that meets once a month. I believe it's the 3rd Monday of the month, if I'm not mistaken. And it is a paid position. Doesn't pay a lot, but it is a paid position. So there is an application that would need to be filled out. So again, if you're interested, please take a look at the village website. There is an application that we've developed. I'll be gathering those applications at the end of the month and then forwarding those on to Larry Gray, the Commerce Township Supervisor. In the past, Larry has actually scheduled interviews with the candidates. I think it's something that the township takes seriously. And I believe that's the way he would handle it again this year. So if there's anybody that is interested, the application is on the website. If you have questions, either call the village hall or send me an email, and I'll try to answer the questions for you. So that's number 1. Number 2, it was with great regret that I notified council within the last couple of weeks that our trusty harvester operator, Grant McNutt, was not going to be able to steer the ship again this year, so to speak. Congratulations to Grant and his family. Grant, I think, is going to go ahead and finish up his schooling and then get into the mortuary science. So good for him. We will miss him around the village hall. We will miss him on the harvester. So we're looking for someone to help pick up some of the hours, a couple days a week on the harvester. Again, it is a paid position on an hourly basis. As I understand, we have 1 potential candidate that's come forward so far, but we'd like to have others. So if there's anybody who lives in the village or lives nearby, you don't have to be a village resident necessarily, but if you're potentially interested in some part-time work over the summer on the harvester, again, please call the village hall, send me an email, whatever you need to do, and we need to get that locked up and buttoned down probably within the next 6 or 8 weeks, something like that, I would think. So the third ask that I have tonight is regarding the Canadian goose population on the lake. We have already gotten word from the DNR that they will not be issuing any permits in the state of Michigan for any goose roundups this year. Last year, if you recall, well, it's a 2-step process, if you will. In the month of April and early May, it's the nest egg program, where you go out and you try to gather the eggs before they mature and hatch, and also destroy the nests to keep the population down. Last year, because of COVID, the state was very slow in processing applications, and they didn't get the permits out in time for people to get out to actually get to the nest before the eggs had started to hatch. Once they start to hatch, obviously you can't be disturbing the nests and taking the hatchlings. So as a result of that, last year we had a huge goose roundup. It was 120 some, I think, geese that we
I
had.
thought it was like 137 or something.
Yeah, something.
It was a record number.
Highest number for, yeah.
So as a result of that, it really was, I think, a pretty good summer on the lake in terms of the geese last year. We didn't see many down at my end of the lake.
Wasn't many around my house.
So, but again, to fast forward to this year now, there are several cases of the avian flu, the bird flu, that have already been confirmed in the state of Michigan. None in Oakland County, but there is a confirmed case in Macomb County. And just so everybody is clear, the avian flu it's not a danger to humans. It's not something that we need to be concerned about. We're not at risk for that. But the bird population is, and there's also a chance that meat processing facilities can also get infected with the same kind of a flu, so, or same kind of a virus. So the state has said to try to limit the spread of the virus, they will not be issuing any Roundup permits this year. So what that means is if we're not going to have any Roundup at the end of the summer, then we need to try to take advantage of the nest egg program at the first part of the summer. If we don't, we're going to have more geese than we know what to do with this year. So we do have a permit that has been approved for the nest egg program. The permit is good through roughly the middle of May, but there are some restrictions. There is some training that's required. There are things that you can do and things that you can't do. But we do need bodies to help with the nest egg program this spring. So if there are any residents that are interested in helping out with that, again, please call the village hall, send me an email. We'll put a list together of people that are interested, and we've still got to kind of marshal our forces and figure out the game plan. But it is something that I would like to do this spring if we can. And the more bodies we get to help out, the more effective that work is going to be. So that's my last ask. Thanks to council for today.
I'll start with Mr. Giarini, I guess.
We had a great body luncheon on Saturday, so I'd like to just thank and congratulate the Park and Rec Board. A little short-handed, but we did a great job, and a lot of happy kids, a lot of smiling kids, and very much thank you to our Easter bunny who stepped up and put on the suit and survived the heat in there and everything else. And then happy Easter to everybody.
Mr. McNutt?
Just happy Easter.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yep, just happy Easter. Hope you all enjoy yourselves.
Mr. Dumont?
Happy Easter.
Mr.
Happy Easter.
Mr. Malik?
I'm back. Reflecting on David's comments, needing people, we also need people on boards. I think water board's down 2 or 3 people. I don't know
Parks and
about
Rec's down big time. Yeah.
ZBA, I believe, is down somebody. Alternate, okay.
Alternate.
But again, that's another thing, people need to be aware of, that we do need volunteers.
I think planning's actually the only full board.
And the next thing, talking to volunteers, you bring up somebody, Parks and Recs for Commerce, and it's a paid position, okay? Which makes our volunteer positions look a little sour. People just, their time to them is valuable if they aren't getting something. So, I don't know what our position is down the road, but it's just like our council fees, okay? It's, and that's been brought up before. I know I brought it up. Somewhere it's going to have to change.
Yeah, we actually approved it.
To get people, yeah.
We approved it.
We've approved it and done nothing with it.
Huh?
For board member?
No.
No,
For
for
council.
council.
Yeah, yeah.
For upping councils.
And it's just, people don't want to do something for nothing because of cost of doing things today.
We'll see how the
It's a
applications we get
sour
for
note
Parks
with the
Parks
dollars
Rec
and
for,
cents.
Commerce, I guess, too.
With the budgets
Yeah.
and everything, but I think it's something we have to consider looking at down the road. So, that's all. Other than that, glad to be back. Chief, outstanding job. I watched all the meetings while I was away, and to council too, great job on everything that transpired. And happy holiday coming up.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. I guess my only comment is, I'm glad Mr. Malik's back. Aren't we all? No, it's good, serious, good to have you back, Bob. And with that, happy Easter, everybody, and that, I guess we'll move into closed session.
And then, for the benefit of our TV audience, I guess the intention would be after the closed session, when Mr. Powell is here, then we'll come back out
Right.
in the regular session and have our discussion about roads. I think he also wanted to provide an update on the
Shankin, yeah,
culvert
culvert.
cleanout issue.
Correct,
Yeah,
yep.
so.
Yes, sir, that's correct. So with that?
Motion to go to closed session?
Second?
Yeah, we already did that.
Yeah, that's right,
We're
you
all
did
set to
do
go.
that.
Okay, we are in open session.
Motion to allow the administrator to proceed as discussed in the closed session.
Second?
Motion by Duff, second by Malik. Any discussion? All in favor on that? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And we move back to item 10. Mr. Powell's here, and he's going to give us an update on road paving.
Thank you, Council. It ended up being a fairly confusing bidding process, simply because we had to bid it out in two separate sections. The road paving is one budget item, and then the Clara Miller Park is another budget item. So I presented it in the same way that the contractors bid it. And the ASI is the contractor who has been doing the paving in the village virtually the last 10 years. Very good contractor. We've had relatively few problems with them, and they were in fact low bidder for the entire project at $978,042.50. And Nagel Paving was next low bidder at $990,000, or about $12,000 more. The interesting part of this project is that ASI Asphalt, that's Asphalt Supply Incorporated, was low bidder on the Clara Miller Park parking lot, but was not the low bidder on the village roads. Nagel Paving was. And so I tried in my written explanation to council to explain that based upon the decision council makes, we would go to one contractor or another contractor. And it makes no difference. They're both extremely good contractors. If council has both projects being done, then I'm going to recommend that ASI Asphalt be the contractor of record and allow us to close the contract with them and negotiate on the timing. If council separates the two projects, then I'm going to recommend that Nagel Paving be awarded the contract for the road paving, and then council we can either rebid the Clara Miller Park paving at a later time, or I could, and I have not done this yet, and I meant to, call ASI and see if they're still willing to hold their price on the Clara Miller Park paving. As you might know from past projects, usually you combine projects together in order to get the best price for both projects. Contractors do not like to see their bids separated because they're using one project to kind of supplement the next project. So if we're going to ask them to do that, it has to be voluntary on their part. We bid it as though it was going to be bid as one project, and if we take part of that project away, we have to make sure the contractors are okay with that. So that's what the discussion needs to be. Number one, is council still on track with the paving project for the roads? And does council want to roll the Clara Miller Park parking lot into this year's project as well? So those discussions I'm here to help you with, as well as David, and we need your input before we can proceed.
I guess one question I had, so you mentioned also too, Mike, that this is a unit price bid.
That is very good, thank you.
So therefore, if Nagel's low on the roads, then they would probably be lower on everything else that would be moving forward too?
You might, and I'm
just asking.
I'm not following you necessarily. Their unit prices are less than ASI's unit prices. That's how they ended up being less on the...
That's where I was going, yeah.
That's correct. So if in fact there was more work to do, their extras would be less than ASI's extras. However, if there's less work to do, their savings to the village would be less. So it wouldn't take much of a drop in units in order to where ASI now is less than what Nagel Paving bid. And that discussion needs to be held as well, because I have the ability in the field and in the design to back off some of the quantities, or back off some of the lineal footage of roadways, or do some more patching on a couple of the roads instead of wholesale replacement. So we need to discuss that and find out whether or not there's a problem with the additional amounts that were bid over and above what the budget has been set for 2021 and 22. Obviously, the discussion for the next year's budget still has to happen. And that being said, I packaged these 2 years together in order to increase the size of the project. That made it more interesting for the contractors to bid on our project. And what we're going to do is then just invoice, the contractors will invoice based upon the budgeted years. And so we can control what happens next year. This year, we have already established a budget for 2021 and 22. So I need to know whether or not council would like to modify the budget for this year, or I can put all the extras into next year and roll it into a budget that you're going to be looking at, quite frankly, next month. So
Probably be the easier way to do it.
that was really
yes.
confusing for you, I know, but we have some options.
As far as Clara Miller parking lot, I know there was talk, we've talked in the past about, maybe putting a boulevard in or changing the opening, right? Exit and entrance into the park off of Benstein there.
Yes.
So was that taken into consideration on paving cost here?
It was not. In the last paving program, when we did 2019, I believe, we actually installed a brand-new entrance about 80 feet back from Benstein Road. We widened it, we put the culvert underneath it, we put the bike path across it, and so that's a brand-new entrance, just a couple of years old. In order to put a boulevard in there, we can't go to the north anymore. That's right, our fence line and our sign is right there.
Right.
So we would have to move to the south, which would encroach upon the fencing and those trees then that are along
Right.
Benstein Road. So we're kind of confined there to our current entrance.
Okay, so basically it's from the entrance in.
About 80 feet back is where we saw cut and then replace the rest of the pavement back into the
You going to
site.
say something?
I mean, my take on Mike's memo, and Mike and I have talked about this several times since the day of the bid opening. Really, the first question that we need to answer is, do we want to do the Clara Miller parking lot this year? Do we want to do it now? And a couple things. Number one, I let you know by way of the update last week, we did get word late Friday afternoon that our grant application with the county for funding for Clara Miller parking lot was not approved. So grant funding from the county is off the table for this year. So Clara Miller parking lot repaving is not budgeted anywhere. There is money out there that we could use. We could either use some general fund money, we could use some of the stimulus money from the federal government. That would be a permitted expenditure of the ARP funds. But grant funding is not in the cards for us for this year. So, my thinking and my recommendation, I mean, I went back and forth. I mean, candidly, there's a question in my mind as to whether or not we really need all the parking that there is at Clara Miller Park. The conversations I've had with other people here at the staff, with Brian, the feedback I get is that there are more people using the park now than there ever have been in the past. And if we're throwing grant money in through the trust fund grant to put in new play equipment, I think the expectation is that the usage of the park is only going to increase going forward. So I think, personally, I think there's still a question there as to whether or not we may be over-parked, but I think that may be a question that really we need to look at down the road. But the parking lot over there now is in terrible shape.
Especially at the eastern end.
Yeah, I mean, it's
It's a wreck over there.
Mike indicates to me that this is a project that we've been putting off for some time. We're dumping, including the grant money, potentially $200,000 into new play equipment over there. And this is our primary recreational facility for the village. And I'm sorry, the parking lot looks like you know what. I mean, it's an embarrassment. So I think one way or another, we ought to find the money to get the Clara Miller parking lot done. That's my thought, my thinking as a resident, as the administrator, that's my recommendation, but ultimately the decision is yours, of course. So, the other comment I would make, Mike Kondak obviously has rejoined us, and I'm not going to try to speak for him, but in terms of how we use the fiscal year 22 money and the fiscal year 23 money, Mike has concerns from I guess from an accounting standpoint or a budgetary standpoint with the idea of using money from the next fiscal year for work that could actually be done during this fiscal year. And I'll let him comment and expound on that, but that throws up some red flags from his standpoint. So part of this analysis might be a discussion about what kind of negotiating Mike Powell and I can do with whoever the contractor is in terms of how they split up the work on the, number one, on the calendar as to when they do the work, but number two, as to when they bill us for the work and when we're actually going to be paying their bills. I mean, if we're paying bills after July 1, that's clearly 22-23 money. But if we're paying bills before July 1, again, unless Mike tells me different, Kondak tells me different, that's 21-22 money. So that's something we need to be conscious about too.
I have a question. The grant money for the $100,000, and we put up 100, they put up 100. Is there going to be a potential that there's going to be equipment that's going to come in and do work that's going to harm a new parking lot?
That is a good point.
It's a good point, something that we've all talked about internally. And again, Brian and I talked about it yesterday. No, the sense that I get is, the answer to that is no. Because we're talking about putting in a couple accessible play structures over on the south side of the park, and then putting in some permeable paving to connect the existing walk going back to the pavilion with the trail over on the south end of the park. So, and potentially some regrading in there, as I understand that part of the park tends to flood. But what I'm hearing, talking with Andy and talking with Mike Powell, talking with Brian, is that kind of work probably is not going to be something that necessarily has to be staged in the parking area. It could be staged in other areas of the park. And even if it was going to be staged in the parking area, it wouldn't be real heavy equipment. It would be likely to tear up any new pavement.
Well, it's worth asking a question.
It's a very legitimate question.
Can I ask Mike a question? Mike, what advantages, disadvantages, or concerns when Dave was talking about billing before July 1st or after July 1st till 21-22 versus 22-23 budget? What should we be concerned about?
Let me tell you what my first concern is, and by the way, I apologize, I was trying to listen. I would hope somebody would have gotten me when Mr. Powell got here. We're way over budget. We're off the rails as soon as we started. We have a plan that dated back to June of 2021, and it was set out for the next 6 years, what was going to be spent, how much of all three sort of components. You have a local street fund, you have major, you have a general fund kick-in because the resources of the major and local street funds are not ample to do the project, and already we're at $800 and some thousand for what was represented to be about $700,000. So that's concern number one. Concern number two has to do with mitigating the effect, because all of this is going to reflect on the general fund. There's going to be a general fund kick-in year over year for the next 6 years. We were going to draw it down to a place where we were about at $1.5 million when this road project was completed. That was, people seem to be embarrassed about the size of the general fund, and yes, if it didn't have a purpose, purpose for spending, then yes, it could be construed as being somewhat, not embarrassing, but more than we really realistically need. This would have brought us down to $1.5 million over the course of 6 fiscal years, representing about roughly 40 to 50% of our general fund expenditure budget, a perfectly defensible position. But I think my concern is if we're going off the rails quick, we're going to be, at that 1.5 million, and a lot of people aren't going to have a lot of work done that was projected to be done. As far as the timing of the thing, nobody's going to cock an eye about, as long as you've got a depiction of where you're going with this, where you're going with the general fund spending. I don't think an auditor's going to have a problem necessarily, as long as it's foreseen. In other words, here's a surprise, here's something else that's going to happen. That's going to cause red flags to go off. I'm sorry, it is. As far as expenditures in the general fund, again, David, an excellent question. It's not just esoteric, it's just, I hope I've explained it, I don't know.
But I don't think that any one of us thinks that inflation's going away, and I think inflation's probably the reason that our asphalt is so expensive and labor is expensive.
Yeah.
And I don't know there's any prediction that that's going to stop happening anytime soon, and we have to have our roads made. So we're kind of caught in a spot that nobody wants to be in, but we're going to just not pave some roads?
Well, given these costs, yeah, you're not going to hit the end, you'll be out of money before you hit the 6 year. End of the 6 year.
It's not sustainable.
Or like Mike was talking about, patching some roads in that might be salvageable?
We could do on a couple of roads, we could do a surface milling, which is you take off the top 2 inches, inch and a half, 2 inches, and just resurface. And certainly, that's not as, the longevity isn't there when you do something like that as when you replace all the pavement, because the crack goes all the way down through the pavement. However, that is a legitimate way to solve the issue, or we could just reduce some of the road lineal footage and move a road that we're doing this year into a future year.
Stretch it out like we did a couple years ago.
The only advantage that we're having in this particular project, all of these roads, except for Wakedo and Winghamton, those are a little bit distant, are in the southern part of the village. So all the roads then in the southern part of the village will be completed at one time instead of having to come in and do Sunset or Meadow Street later on, that subdivision. Some of the blowback might be, how come my street wasn't done? It looks just like my neighbor's street. And so there's an advantage here in doing this now, and then maybe delaying future expenses, because as you pointed out, David, prices are only going to be going up. Mike's point's well taken. There's only so much money in the barrel.
The cookie jar is getting empty.
It will be at the end of 6 years.
Yep.
All 3 funds, major, local, and general.
Well, I would point out again, and not to argue or debate the point, but we do have a pot of federal stimulus money right now.
Right. That's dwindling too.
Well, but we still have several $100,000, and again, that's meant to be for larger transformational projects. And arguably in the village, our roads, that's a big.
That's the biggest expense.
It's a big expense.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the parking lot is in terrible shape at Clara Miller, so I think it'd be good to get that done one way or the other. And lumping it in with a major road project like this is going to probably get our best bang for the buck.
Well, you can see it's really interesting how they divided up the costs.
Yeah.
ASI actually put most of their money into the roads and then had a lesser price for the Clara Miller, whereas the other contractors put more money in the park and less in the roads, which was kind of an interesting change. They have that ability to move their funds around.
Well, essentially, we could pare down the road fund just a hair and still be way a fair amount under. I mean, Nagel was, with the park project, they were about 30 over.
Correct.
Just on the parking lot. So that's 20, another third of the cost, actually. So, for Clara Miller.
Do we know how many cars are in our permanent park on a daily basis? Weekday, weekend?
I don't know, I go Penstein on the way home to work quite a bit, and
Versus foot traffic or bike traffic?
it's a nice day, there's a fair amount of people out. But, and I don't know, Mark, I mean, you might know a little bit more, but when, Little League's going, people,
When practices are going in the evening.
Is it pretty full?
And if there's a street hockey game going, and if we're having an event, it's pretty
there's
full.
basketball games going down there all the
There's
time.
always, and in those cases, those are just pickup usually, and it's a lot of times just some kids on bikes.
Yeah.
But the only times it's definitely full would be on a day like where we're there too, holding an event, plus there's practices, and then of course like the corn roast where we're overflowing.
Yeah, that's overflowing.
Because it includes Clara Miller, I'll move forward and recommend that we choose ASI asphalt. And if we get into discussion, then I'd like to talk about it.
Okay. And here's a second.
Are you attaching a dollar amount to that?
$978,042.50.
I'll second it.
Just under discussion, if that motion stands, then what I will do is make sure that, because I want to make sure the budget stays below that. Keep in mind that that's why I pointed out in the end of my letter that it's a unit price contract, and so it can go up a little bit and down a little bit. Normally, we tack 10% or so onto that just to make sure there's enough to finish the roads that we have in the contract. I would then just potentially pare back some of the work to make sure that we don't go over that if I see the unit prices going above that, because I wouldn't want to go over the budget that council sets.
You want to say not to exceed.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if you were here, Mike, we were talking about earlier, but I think Mike Powell was mentioning that they were talking about billing us as what we had budgeted for, correct?
Correct. For
So,
this year.
in other words, for this year's budget, we had, what was it?
Well, between major and local, I think it was around 350,000. With the general fund kick-in.
We had, okay, in your letter, you had 419.
Yeah, 419,000 is what I added.
Yeah, okay. So that, I mean, we can kind of direct him at that point, I mean, to look at going for the 419 max billing in this budget year,
Right.
and then
The balance.
the balance would be the next budget year, so that way we
Correct.
wouldn't have to amend this year's, correct?
We'd be okay for this year.
Right, right.
But again, the idea that we are way over what was originally anticipated as far as total cost of the project.
Right, yeah.
I don't think that there is a win-win in this situation. I would love a win-win.
Yeah.
Everyone here does. I think we're really looking at least bad. And that's not fun. But these prices aren't coming down. And well, I mean, I can't predict the future, but I don't hear anybody disagreeing with me. I don't see anyone even talking about trying to lower prices on anything like this that has anything to do with fossil fuels or labor.
Well, the only thing that would actually decrease the price of asphalt would be oil.
Yeah.
Oil cost going down.
If oil dropped.
So, I mean, if we change our oil policy, maybe that might bring the price of the material somewhat down a little bit. It's not gonna be 50% or anything, but.
You're right, but
And I don't see
I
labor
didn't hear
going
a
down.
discussion about that.
Yeah, I don't see labor going down.
And so for the last, I think I've been dealing with this budget with you guys for maybe 6-7 years, something like that. And we've always said, well, prices are going to keep going up. Why don't we get it done now while the prices are cheaper? Mike, you've recommended more than once that we do that.
Correct.
And it's like, oh, well, the prices probably aren't going to go up that much. But look at how much they've gone up just in the last 2 years. And if that continues, we're going to regret not paving Claire Miller for $100,000. As ridiculous as that sounds, we're going to end up in a spot where it's going to be, let's just, I don't know, I'm going to throw out an irresponsible number, $175,000, not that I can predict the future again, but it's going to be more. It's going to be something we're going to say, boy, I wish we would have paved it for $100,000, back when it was cheap, quote unquote, cheap.
That quote for Claire Miller's from 2019, I believe, the original one, the 138.
Yes, that was the estimated back
Yeah.
when that's correct.
So that was, I mean, surprisingly better than we expected there.
May I, Mr.
Right.
President?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
In talking about the $100,000 for the paving of the parking lot, sometimes, well, how can I put this? In this budget year, we have $100,000 budgeted for capital outlay in parks and recreation. The idea was, now you have to go backward a year, we're unfamiliar with the success or not success of our application for the grant. I threw it in there as a placeholder, thinking things could have taken place within this fiscal year, i.e. the fiscal year that ends in 2 months. Obviously, that's not going to happen. That whatever, assuming funding is still available and there's no twists or curveballs, we'll be doing this whole thing next year. So, I mean, the net expense to us is $100,000. It's not going to hit our books this year. I'm not going to set it aside or preordain it or anything like that. So sometimes you budget stuff, you don't achieve it's not necessarily what you budgeted it for, yet it's still set aside. You could pave the parking lot.
With that, yeah.
Sometimes, funds like that.
That's
it's
right.
not the original intent, but the money's there, is my point.
Yep. In that case, we would have to up the budget next year for that $100,000 to pay for the DNR grant. So it's swapping Peter to pay Paul. Okay. Last 2 village roads that are dirt. I mean, that was Wakedo and...
That's included, they're included to be paid. That will
This year?
eliminate the dirt, this year.
Okay.
That'll eliminate the 2 last remaining dirt roads, correct.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion at this point? And I know, I mean, we've had this discussion probably dating back 12 years or something, as far as trying to push some of this stuff down the road a little bit too.
Well, we did that.
We did it.
We actually
We did
stopped
it.
road paving for 2 years.
Right, yep.
And
we
that's how we extended it
kinda
out
lengthened
to
things out a
6, 7
little bit.
years now instead
Yeah.
of the 5-year program.
So we might have to look at, moving forward, maybe trying to extend that out even a little bit further, depending on how funds look down the road.
Yeah, that can be done.
Well, 2 comments. First, keep in mind, too, that originally last year, when we started our budget discussions, we were talking about a 5-year road plan.
Correct.
And we extended it out. What was actually, the budget for this year was based upon was a 6-year road.
6 years, yeah.
Right.
6-year road plan, so we've done that before. The other thing, too, that we've talked about lumping in somewhere is to expand the parking lot over by the tennis courts.
Yep.
Is part of the road improvements, too. So,
Right, yeah, I remember bringing that up a couple times. And that 5 spaces over there just isn't cutting it,
and I don't
as far as the
believe
pickleball.
That's not included
That's not
in these
in
figures, and
this.
that's not, it has not been budgeted
Right.
anywhere either, so.
Yeah.
I don't believe, like, is it? Yeah.
So I guess that would be a question whether we want to try to lump that in at some point this summer, or push that till next year. Lump it in with maybe next year's paving or something.
Or further, I mean.
Yeah, we're essentially doing 2 years at this point.
Yeah, keep in mind.
So there won't be anything next year.
That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Not
yeah.
until the fall, and we get in the 23-24 budget.
Right.
That is correct.
Right, yeah. So I guess it would probably make sense to try to do that. If we were thinking about extending it, it would probably make sense to try to get that done this year, or we're going to wait for another 2 or 3 years. Right?
Our contractor would allow us to do that at the unit prices.
Yeah.
The downside to that is, and this is how we built it before, they don't build the roads or the parking lot. So the DPW and really Jeff Miller built the subgrade, created it all, and then our paver just came in and paved.
Right.
And that's how we would do the expansion as well if we wanted to do that this year. And when I say this year, we should discuss that with Mike in next year's budget, and we can include that in next year's budget.
Right, but I think it would probably make sense to do it this year, because they're going to be right on Wauketo anyways with equipment, so.
They will be.
I mean,
That is
it's right
correct.
there.
Yes.
So. Okay. Any more discussion? Okay, I guess roll call vote?
Is there a second to that motion?
Yeah, Mark
Thank you.
Duff, yeah.
Councilman Giramini,
Yes.
Councilman McNutt,
Yes.
Councilman O'Brien,
Yes.
President Nedrow,
Yes.
Councilman Dumont,
Yes.
Councilman Duff,
Yes.
Councilman Malik.
Yes.
Thank you, Council, very much. That's a very difficult, just on its face, and then the way it's all combined, it became confusing. So thank you, Council. The last
Mike,
item...
I'm sorry, Mike, does that give you all the information that
It
you
does.
need at this point in time?
It
to-
does. Now, I can, absolutely, I can sit down with the contractors, have them sign the contracts, let them know how the project's going to proceed. And you and I will just talk about the potential expansion of the Wauketo parking lot, and whether or not I include any of that in this contract. So, I'm hoping that we can keep the overall project below the budgets to where, obviously, it's better to come in under budget than over budget. DPW has the ability, I'm a major fan of the DPW, and there are some areas here that I've included in this contract that this contractor has to hire subcontractors to do what DPW might be able to do. And I've already talked to Andy about that a little bit, and so it's possible that we can remove items of work in this contract and have the DPW do it and save the village quite a bit of money, and that's more stormwater related. And so I'll work with DPW and see if we can't make that happen.
I think it helped things in a little bit too.
It all helps.
Sure. I have a question. Is there a charge to the homeowner on Wauketo? You know, I remember my house when they paved, you know, my subdivision was all gravel. I lived on a corner, I paid for 2 streets. You know, I don't know what the numbers are or whatever, but there should be a cost factor for the house that is there, or 2, whichever it involves.
I think you'd have to do that under a special assessment, right?
I don't know, but again...
Pretty sure that's how Brisbane and a number of streets in that area were originally paved, through a special assessment, a 10-year special assessment. In this case, I think the idea is that they're not going to pay for anything. The homeowners are not. You'd have to go through the whole, remember what we've done before with special assessments, the hearing, the need, all that stuff. So it's a drawn-out process, and you wouldn't be able to sell bonds for it. It's so small, you'd have to basically self-finance it.
There's really only a couple people that benefit from it too, yeah.
That's correct.
Except for the fact of traffic flow. I mean, Wauketo's kind of a cut-through road right there.
Right.
But we have an expense that we have to maintain the gravel road, you know, so.
Well, that's right, yeah.
So I just,
Well, it's gonna be our expense one way or the other, I guess, at that point, so.
Bob is right, he's remembering correctly, but Spring Lake Heights Annex was all gravel, and it was...
Spring Lake Heights, yeah.
Spring Lake Heights, I'm sorry. It was all gravel, and the council at that time decided to establish a special assessment district, as Mike pointed out, and we all know how that process works. To go for a special assessment district on just 2 homes, obviously wouldn't happen. And you'd really open up the opportunity for them to say, no, we'll live with our gravel road. And council's kind of the one that's decided that let's eliminate gravel roads. Because Wauketo, and Winghamton would be the same thing. So we have homes that we're going to pave, very few homes on Winghamton, just to get rid of that gravel road.
I think there's only like 3 or 4 homes, I think.
There's only 4 homes on it.
On Winghamton, yeah.
Right.
okay.
All right. The last item that I just wanted to bring out was we attempted to have the contractor start the cleaning and do the cleaning of the Shanken Road tube last month. And because of the weather, the road commission put the frost laws on much earlier than normal, so did not allow the contractor to move his equipment in place. As a matter of fact, I don't even think they're off yet. And so it took a month. Normally, they're only on for a couple of weeks. In a month, it stopped all large equipment from moving. It came to the point to where, and I think rightly so, Administrator Gillum said, we have to close the gates and start raising the water. It would have been a shame to hold off until they could move their equipment. So I have contacted the contractor, let them know that we're not going to do it this year. They have it on our schedule for November 1 this next fall.
Perfect.
And so I believe right now they said they'll hold their price, and it's on their schedule. So as we approach, I'll bring that back before council, and we'll want to include it in next year's budget discussions as well.
Great.
Would the water be low enough on November 1?
We'll probably have to get it down. We have the ability to get it down quick.
Yes, we do.
Not the day they open it up.
Give it 2 days.
Yeah. And
the whoosh.
even though we said November 1, if it were November 15th, well, that would be a tough day for a
15th would
contractor.
be the wrong day.
But a little bit
Maybe
later.
the 20th, yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
Look at it this way, when you open those gates, you get in your kayak, you won't have to paddle.
Yeah, that's right. So unless council had any other questions, I thank you again for your patience. It was an important meeting that I couldn't get out of in White Lake, and I
That worked
appreciate
out.
your patience.
No worries.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you. Okay, with that, I guess, just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Dumas.
Second.
Second by Duff. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.